Freedom fighters, I'm coming back at you with another one. Well, this one's going to be a little different. I got another phone here with me, and I'm in a different location, so the audio's a little different. I was starting up the video, and I could tell it was a little weird, so hopefully, not too much audio issues, and you guys can hear, and everything's fine. I think I got it under control, but. Um, Anyway, I wanted to talk about this Gavin Newsome interview that was done with Shawyn Ryan. A lot of people were harping on that and talking about that interview. And I guess the main controversial point about it was that, he gifts everybody stuff at the beginning of his show. And it often lately he's been giving people firearms because one of his friends is from SIG and he donates them for Shawyn Ryan's gifts. Well, anyway, so he gave, anti-gun Gavin Newsome a brand new SIG, and he took it in stride and looked, pretty surprised but happy to receive it. And when he started talking about how he wasn't actually anti-gun and he believes in the Second Amendment, and Sean, didn't really press him on that. But he goes to talk about, their normal points of, I'm not for, I'm not anti-gun, or I'm not trying to take the guns. I'm just for, common sense gun control and all that. But, again, he's not, what I always say with all these anti-gun politicians, they're not anti-gun, they're anti-you having a gun. And we've covered multiple, situations and scenarios where we've covered this with politicians. I forget where, I think it was like a politician in New Jersey or Pennsylvania where someone was saying, they've lightened up the gun laws. And just imagine if these people had, the guns over in this county, which was like, a ghetto, bad area, or, a part of the town. And it proved right there. They're just like, it's not the gun laws that they specifically are against. It's who's going to get them. And in this time period, I don't know what you want to call it, political turmoil where everybody's at each other's throats and everyone hates everybody, and they know they're trying to push an agenda and get the population, under control, they can't have you being armed and able to resist. That's how they cuck you. That's how they've turned us into, where we're at. That's how they build the docile, subservient population that's gonna bend the knee and, enter the CBDC social credit score system when the next lockdowns come up, or when they make the new laws, or even further, infringe on gun rights, or whatever they or try to push next. This is how they get you to submit. If you're not armed, you can't. You have to bend to their will, and they know that. I was watching a video one time. I can't remember whose that was, but they were like, I forget, they were talking about like a revolution or something, and they were like, oh no, you can't do that, or they'll initiate martial law. And there's always an excuse, or they'll suspend your rights, or they'll declare you a domestic enemy and suspend habeas corpus. That's another one I always heard. They're gonna build camps and throw you in a gulag. I'm like, do you people not have any red line? Is there no line in the sand that they can't cross? And it's, what if they suspend your rights and declare martial law and throw you in a camp? Well, yeah, that's called civil war. That's it's pretty much locked down. They declare you an enemy of the state, a domestic enemy, and suspend habeas corpus, and it's open season on a segment of the population. That is literally civil war. And I always go back to that clip of Charlie Kirk. and I forget, he was doing one of his town halls or something like that, and one of his guests stood up and was saying, like, we're already living under the tyranny, and when do we get to use the guns? And the whole audience is like down with it and cheering, and some people snickering and laughing. But Charlie Kirk goes into serious mode and doubles down and goes, no, no, you can't do that, because that's what they want, so they can enact further control. That's when they put in stricter restrictions or flat out take the guns. I'm like, do you plan on letting them? Like, that's what it is, man. And we're at this turning point, no pun intended, talking about Charlie Kirk, but we are literally at the fork in the road, if you want to use another term, of where we go out in this country, and if we're gonna just keep on taking it, or we're gonna turn course and turn the ship around and do something. But I actually tweeted this thing the other day on X about Grok, where I think it originated from Tucker Carlson talking about people peacefully, basically, like, not paying back their credit cards or not paying taxes or something like that. I think maybe it was somebody responding to a Tucker video. I can't even remember. But they were like, this is basically a civil disobedience, like, just basically stopping the system. We're no longer going to pay the bills. We're not going to submit to the taxes or the tyranny or whatnot. And I just threw up a hypothetical question to Grok. What would happen then if the citizenry, the populace together, shot the authorities that would be coming after the people who refuse to pay their taxes or their credit card debt or whatnot? When eventually they would have, the people were talking about debt prisons, and we all know the IRS is armed up and all that. And I can't remember verbatim what Grok responded. There was another AI that responded too, that said something about, this would basically lead to civil unrest and possibly civil war, but like real revolutions come from when the military decides to defect or not follow orders, which I agreed with. But then there was this other AI that mentioned, it said something about, stick to the voting box unless Lexington cosplay. So it basically said, no, this is all a LARP and it's not possible. But yeah, I mean, that was pretty funny answers that I got there. But, and again, it was just a question, what would happen if people just stopped playing the game and we stopped submitting? Of course, the disclaimer, I do not support, encourage, incite any illegal, violent, unlawful behavior whatsoever. So don't go do anything and tell them you heard it from Freedom Fighter, or Freedom told me to do it, because here I am telling you not to. But the whole point was, when I saw that interview, I was just like, it's another rules for me and not for thee. And Gavin Newsome was playing Sean like a fiddle. And one thing I got to give to him, he is a good speaker. He knows how to spin stuff. I saw clips all the time, and he's running this as ads. That interview is probably going to be in his presidential run, where he was talking about taxes in California and how Florida and Texas actually pay more in taxes. He knows how to work the system. He knows how to speak, and he's definitely war gamed his his campaign and what he's gonna say. But either way, man, it's damned if we do, damned if we don't. Either way you move, like I've talked about, you're screwed, and that's called checkmate. That's where we're at now. Like, how long that we've waited, we're at this point in the game. It's near game over, and I just did a video about it. Nothing ever happens, or Are you prepared for nothing to happen? Is it just doom and gloom? But this is pretty much how this human cycle is. And I've talked about the cycles before. But, I just feel like, maybe I'll do a video in the future of that very topic, that it is coming. And I'll definitely touch on that again. But, oh man, the other thing I wanted to get to, which I mentioned in my last video, that this is really what got me on this whole topic of the Gavin Newsome interview and the, rules for me but not for thee, and the hypocrisy was this whole CEO kiss cam debacle at the Coldplay concert, and everyone's talking about this guy, the billionaire CEO. Well, he's actually not a billionaire. That was the thing that was passed around at first. He's owner or the CEO of a billionaire company, but they say his net worth is somewhere between like 60 and 80 million dollars. Either way, he's a CEO. He's making massive amount of money. You already know the story. He was at this Coldplay concert with his side piece, and they made a big deal of it. Which I was thinking the other thing. If these guys just played it off and didn't make that big scene when they were on the camera, no one would have ever known. No one knows who these people are. It was only the reaction that people said, "Oh, something's up with them, and let's look into it, and figure it out." But and of course, the other thing I want to talk about is everyone put the blame on the guy. At first, they were headhunting for the guy. That's the first thing first. And he had to resign. He lost his job and all this stuff. And which I'm not supporting that at all. But I did have to remind a couple of people who were going crazy on this that, this isn't a crime. It's not against the law to cheat or to go to a concert with your girlfriend, even though you're married, but it is a moral crime, I guess you could say. And it's definitely despicable, and it should be shamed. But people were treating it like, this guy needs to like go to prison, and he needs to lose his job and all this stuff. And I think the woman he was with, I believe she's still with the company, and I don't know what she's facing, any kind of backlash or discipline there, but they're basically headhunting for the guy, and he got it. But anyway, man, the point I wanted to make there was the woman he was cheating with was the HR director of the company they were running, and again, it mixes into that Gavin Newsome rules for me but not for thee, where it's like the most hypocritical people are the ones making the rules. And can you imagine the speeches she's giving out and stuff like that? Like, you'll get in trouble. You compliment Susie one morning and say, "Oh, a nice new haircut," or "I like the way your hair's done. You always have it up," or whatnot. And you let it down today, and then HR department's coming down and is like, "Oh no, you made contact with Susie and made a sexist comment on her appearance, and none of that in the workplace, and you're harassing her, yet she's out here having an affair with the CEO." And it goes back to that hypocrisy of Gavin Newsome, owning guns, and these politicians. Like I said, they're not anti-gun, they're anti-you having a gun. And same with the HR departments and all people in basically positions of authority. They're hypocrites, and you could almost put it another way. They're not anti-fun. They're anti-you having fun. They'll put policies in place, no relationships in the workplace, none of this, none of that. Yet they'll do it themselves. Same thing with the cops. You see it over and over. I talk a lot about that channel. The guy, forget his name, but he runs Never Get Busted, and he was a former cop, like top cop, that did drug arrests and stuff like that. And he turned out he was doing drugs, and they just arrested some other cop for stealing a vehicle, and they have all kinds of cops getting charged for stuff every day, for screwing females in the back of their police car and taking in prostitutes and stuff like that. Like, but if you're just a normal John, you're going to jail, and they're going to take you to jail for the very same thing that they just did. So yeah, but respect thy authority. That's what it is, man. It's hypocrisy and authority and rules for me, but not for thee. Man, but till the next one, man, you know what it is. We are on our own. Nobody's coming to save us. So get right with God, because only God can save you. Freedom fighters out.